I'm Isabella Santos, 32, standing in the grand ballroom of the Morrison Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, watching the family who treated me like dirt for 15 years celebrate their annual charity gala. Eleanor Morrison's voice carries over the orchestra as she tells her society friends, "Can you imagine? The maid's daughter actually thought she could attend as a guest." I had to remind her that staff enters through the service entrance, even if they're not working tonight. The maid's daughter. That's all I've ever been to them. The charity case they graciously allowed to live in their mansion after my mother died scrubbing their floors. The girl who should be grateful for their leftovers, who should know her place, who should understand that some people are born to serve while others are born to be served. What they don't know is that I bought their entire empire 6 months ago through a complex series of shell companies. The Morrison Hotels chain they're so proud of?
Mine.
Their Manhattan mansion?
Mine.
The country club where they humiliate me every summer?
Mine.
Even this ballroom where they're mocking me? I own every crystal in that chandelier, every thread in that carpet, every brick in these walls. In approximately 10 minutes, when James Wellington, the CEO of Morrison Hotels, takes the stage for his annual speech, their carefully constructed world of inherited privilege is going to collapse. Because James doesn't just work for me, he's about to announce the ownership transfer that will strip them of everything they've used to make me feel worthless. Before I tell you how 15 years of calculated revenge is about to unfold in front of New York's elite, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been treated as less than human by people who confused inheritance with worth? Have you built an empire while others saw you as nothing more than the help? Drop a comment below, and please subscribe if you want to hear more stories about underdogs who don't just bite back, they buy the whole kennel. My story begins when I was 8 years old, the day my mother and I moved into the Morrison estate in the Hamptons. My mother, Maria Santos, had been hired as their live-in housekeeper, a position that came with a small room in the servants' quarters and the promise of stability for a single mother who'd fled an abusive marriage with nothing but her daughter and determination. "Remember, Mija," my mother whispered as we stood at the service entrance with our 2 suitcases. "We work with dignity. No matter how they treat us, we keep our heads high." The Morrison family represented everything my mother and I were not. Old money, Ivy League educated, connected to power in ways that seemed almost mystical to a girl from the Bronx. Richard Morrison had inherited a hotel chain started by his great-grandfather. His wife Eleanor came from banking royalty. Their 3 children, Alexander, Victoria, and the youngest, Sophia, were raised to believe the world existed to accommodate them. "This is Maria, our new housekeeper," Eleanor announced to her children that first day, not bothering to introduce me. "She'll be handling all the household duties. If you need anything cleaned, just leave it for her." Alexander, 16 and already perfecting his father's sneer, looked at my mother like she was furniture. Victoria, 14 and vicious, stared at my worn shoes with undisguised disgust. Only Sophia, who was my age, showed any interest. "Does she have a daughter?" Sophia asked, pointing at me. "Yes, unfortunately." Eleanor sighed as if my existence was a personal inconvenience. "Isabella will be staying in the servants' quarters." "She is not," she emphasized each word, a playmate. "She's the maid's daughter. There's a difference." That difference would be made clear to me every single day for the next 15 years. My mother worked 18-hour days, keeping the Morrison estate pristine. She scrubbed their toilets, washed their clothes, cooked their meals, and cleaned up after their parties where guests dropped more on champagne than she made in a month. I helped when I wasn't in school, learning to be invisible, to anticipate needs before they were voiced, to exist in their space without taking up any of it. Can you believe the maid's daughter goes to our school? I overheard Victoria telling her friends when I started at the local public elementary school. "My mother says it's charity. They probably can't even afford notebooks." She was half right. We couldn't afford much, but my mother made sure I had what I needed for school, even if it meant she skipped meals. Education was the one thing she insisted on. "Study hard, Mija," she'd say, helping me with homework after her exhausting days. "They can take everything else, but knowledge stays in your head." The Morrison children attended private schools, of course. But even at the public school, their shadow followed me. Everyone knew I was the helps kid, living in the big house but not of it. Birthday parties I wasn't invited to. Sleepovers I couldn't host. A childhood spent on the margins of other people's lives. The cruelty was casual, constant. When I was 10, Sophia had a birthday party, a lavish affair with ponies and a 3-tier cake. I watched from the kitchen window as my mother served food to shrieking children who left more on their plates than we ate in a week. Why can't Isabella come to my party? I heard Sophia ask her mother. Because she's not your friend, darling. She's the maid's daughter. It would confuse the other children to see the help pretending to be guests. Pretending, as if wanting to be included, was above my station. That night, my mother found me crying in our tiny room. What's wrong, Mija? Why do they hate us? I asked. We didn't do anything wrong. My mother held me close, and I felt her tears fall on my hair. They don't hate us. They don't see us. To them, we're not people, we're functions. I'm not Maria. I'm the maid. You're not Isabella. You're the maid's daughter. But listen to me, Mia Moore. You are so much more than what they see. How do you know? Because I see you. And one day, the whole world will too. She was right, though neither of us could have imagined how right. The worst year was when I turned 15. My mother had been diagnosed with cancer, a detail she hid from the Morrisons because she couldn't afford to lose her job and the health insurance that came with it. She worked through chemotherapy, throwing up quietly in the bathroom between cleaning their houses, styling Eleanor's hair for galas while her own fell out from treatment. I took on more of her duties, waking at 4 a.m. to clean before school, rushing home to prepare dinner, doing laundry until midnight. My grades never slipped. I couldn't afford to let them, but I was exhausted constantly. The maid's daughter looks terrible, Victoria announced at breakfast one morning when I served them. Are you on drugs? My mother says poor people often turn to drugs. I'm fine, Miss Victoria, I said quietly, though I'd had 2 hours of sleep. You should take better care of yourself, Eleanor added without looking up from her phone. It reflects poorly on us to have unkempt help. Unkempt. My mother was dying, I was keeping their house running, maintaining a 4.0 GPA, and they were concerned about appearances. Alexander was home from Harvard that year, full of business theories and casual cruelty. You know what your problem is? He told me one day as I cleaned his room. People like you have no ambition. You're content being servants because you can't imagine being anything else. I was valedictorian of my high school at the time, but to him, I was just the girl who emptied his trash. My mother died on a Tuesday. She'd worked Monday, preparing for one of Eleanor's dinner parties, smiling through pain that would have crippled others. She died in our little room, holding my hand, whispering apologies for leaving me alone. You're not alone, I lied. I'll be fine. My smart girl, she whispered. Show them. Show them what we're made of. Those were her last words. Show them. The Morrisons gave me 3 days for the funeral, unpaid, of course. They attended the service, sitting in the back, checking their phones. Eleanor complained about the flowers, saying they trigger her allergies. Richard kept looking at his watch. The children didn't come at all. I suppose you'll need to make arrangements, Eleanor told me afterward, for your living situation. I was 17, 3 months from 18, with a full scholarship to Columbia that I'd hidden from them. I have nowhere else to go, Mrs. Morrison. She sighed dramatically. I suppose you can stay until you graduate, but you'll need to take on your mother's duties. We can't afford to hire someone new right away. Couldn't afford. They had 7 homes. So I became their full-time maid while finishing high school. I cleaned their toilets before calculus, served their breakfast before AP chemistry, washed their sheets before writing essays that would win me every scholarship I applied for. They never asked about my plans, assuming I'd follow my mother's footsteps into a lifetime of service. The acceptance letter from Columbia came on a Saturday. I was serving lunch when Victoria noticed the thick envelope in my apron pocket. What's that? Food stamps? College mail, I said quietly. The table went silent. Then Richard laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. College? You? Which community college? Eleanor asked with false sweetness. I suppose they have programs for people like you. Columbia, I said. The silence was different this time. Shocked rather than dismissive. "That's impossible," Alexander said flatly. "You're lying." I pulled out the letter, showing them the letterhead, the congratulations, the full scholarship details. Their faces went through a range of emotions: disbelief, anger, and something like fear. "This must be a mistake," Eleanor insisted. "Or some kind of diversity quota thing." "It's merit-based," I said. "I'm valedictorian of public school." Victoria sneered, recovering first. "That's like being the smartest kid in special edition." But I saw the crack in their worldview. The maid's daughter wasn't supposed to go to Columbia. The help wasn't supposed to transcend their station. "Well," Richard said after a long pause, "I suppose you'll be leaving us then." "After graduation," I confirmed. "Good," Eleanor said coldly. "It's time you found your own way. We've been more than generous, housing you after your mother's passing." Generous. I'd worked without pay for months, maintaining their home while maintaining my grades, and they called it generosity. But I smiled and nodded, already planning. My mother had said to show them what we were made of. She thought education would be enough. But I knew better. In their world, only one thing mattered: money. And I was going to have more of it than they could imagine. Columbia was a different universe. For the first time, I wasn't the maid's daughter. I was just Isabella Santos, freshman with big dreams and bigger hunger. I studied business and economics, but my real education came from watching how wealth worked, how the rich stayed rich and got richer. I started small, buying and selling textbooks for profit. Then electronics. Then anything I could flip for more than I paid. By sophomore year, I had enough saved to invest in stocks. By junior year, I was running a small investment fund for other students, turning their pizza money into portfolio gains. "You have a gift," Professor Martin told me after I'd predicted a market shift that made my clients 300% returns. "An instinct for seeing value where others see nothing." I thought of all the times the Morrisons had seen nothing when they looked at me. Yes, I had that instinct. My senior year, I took an internship at a boutique investment firm. The CEO, David Chen, became my mentor after I identified an undervalued hospitality company that his analysts had missed. "How did you spot this?" he asked after the acquisition netted the firm $50 million. "I understand service," I said simply. "I know what makes a hotel run, what guests never see but always feel." This company had good bones, just bad management. "Would you consider staying after graduation?" "I'll match any offer you get." I stayed. And learned. And earned. Within 3 years, I was managing my own portfolio. Within 5, I'd started my own firm with David's blessing and backing. But I stayed under the radar, building quietly, letting the work speak for itself. The Morrisons never knew. Why would they? They'd stopped thinking about me the day I left their estate. I was a footnote in their story, the help's daughter who'd gotten ideas above her station. They had no idea I was writing a different story entirely. My firm specialized in hospitality, hotels, resorts, luxury properties. I understood the industry from the ground up, literally. I knew what it took to keep a property running because I'd been the one running it. I knew what wealthy guests expected because I'd cleaned up after them. I knew where the inefficiencies were because I'd lived them. We acquired undervalued properties, restructured them, and sold them for massive profits. But I had a bigger goal. The Morrison Hotel chain had been coasting on its reputation for decades, poorly managed by Richard and now Alexander, who'd taken over as CEO despite having no actual qualifications beyond his last name. I studied their financials obsessively. Every weakness, every bad decision, every vulnerability. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, they overextended. When the market recovered, they made poor investments. By 2015, they were hemorrhaging money, but too proud to admit it. That's when I made my move. It took 3 years of careful maneuvering. Shell companies buying their debt. Strategic investments in their competitors to squeeze their market share. Quiet acquisitions of their suppliers and partners. By the time they realized they were in trouble, I owned everything around them. The final piece came 6 months ago. The Morrison Hotels were desperate for capital. Their board was in revolt. Their stock was in free fall. They needed a buyer, but their pride demanded discretion. Through a series of intermediaries, my company made an offer they couldn't refuse. We'd buy them out, keep the Morrison name, let them save face. They never knew who was behind the purchase. The paperwork went through dozens of lawyers and investment vehicles. Even James Wellington, the CEO I'd installed, didn't know the ultimate owner's identity until last week when I finally told him. "You want me to announce this at their charity gala?" He'd asked, shocked. "That seems appropriate." I'd finished. They humiliated me at every opportunity. Let them learn humility at their own party. Which brings us to tonight. The Morrison Charity Gala, held in the ballroom of their flagship hotel, my hotel, to raise money for underprivileged youth, though I doubt any actual underprivileged youth had ever seen a penny. I'd received an invitation, not as a guest, but as a donor. My company was listed among the sponsors, though they didn't know it was mine. I debated not coming, but my mother's voice echoed, "Show them what we're made of." So I came. I wore a simple black dress, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth. I wanted them to see me as they'd always seen me before the truth destroyed their worldview. Security tried to stop me at the entrance. "Staff uses the service entrance," the guard said, recognizing me from years ago. "I have an invitation." I showed him the embossed card.
He laughed.
"Nice try.
Did you steal this?
Is there a problem?" A familiar voice. Alexander Morrison, older, softer, but still wearing the same sneer. "Mr. Morrison, this woman claims to have an invitation, but I recognized her. She used to work here." Alexander's eyes found mine, and I saw the moment of recognition. "Isabella? The maid's daughter?" "Hello, Alexander. What are you doing here? How did you get an invitation?" "I donated," I said simply. He laughed, that same harsh sound his father had made when I'd mentioned Colombia. "You donated? What, $20? Did you think that would buy you entry into our world?" "I thought it might buy something," I said mildly. "Security, please escort her out." Or better yet, his smile turned cruel. "Let her in through the service entrance. She can help serve if she needs money that badly."
For old time's sake.
The guard moved toward me, but I held up my hand. "That won't be necessary. I'll see myself to the ballroom." "You'll see yourself out," Alexander corrected.
10 minutes, I said.
"Give me 10 minutes, and then I'll leave through whichever door you prefer." Something in my tone must have intrigued him. Or maybe he wanted to see me humiliated in front of his society friends. Either way, he nodded to the guard. 10 minutes. Then you're gone." I walked into the ballroom I'd cleaned 1,000 times, now dressed in its finest for the cream of New York society. The Morrisons held court at the head table, Richard older but still imperious, Eleanor perfectly preserved, Victoria married to a senator now, Sophia pretending to care about charity while texting on a diamond-encrusted phone. Eleanor saw me first. Her face went from confusion to recognition to disgust in 3 seconds. She whispered to Richard, who turned and stared. Then Victoria noticed, and her laugh cut through the orchestra music. "Oh my God, is that the maid's daughter? What is she doing here?" The whispers spread like wildfire. The help's daughter. At their gala. The audacity. The embarrassment. Security should remove her.
Someone should say something.
Eleanor rose, gliding toward me with the practiced grace of someone who'd never scrubbed a floor in her life. "Isabella." "How unexpected. I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding, Mrs. Morrison." "Then I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave. This is a private event for donors and," she paused delicately, "people of a certain standing. I'm sure you understand." "I donated $5 million to tonight's cause," I said conversationally. "Does that meet the standing requirement?" Her face went white. "That's impossible." "Many things you thought impossible have happened, Mrs. Morrison. My mother always said you lacked imagination." "Your mother was a maid," she hissed, dropping the polite facade. "And you're the maid's daughter. Money doesn't change blood." "No," I agreed. "It doesn't. Which is why your blood won't save you from what's about to happen." Before she could respond, the lights dimmed. James Wellington took the stage, tapping the microphone. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm James Wellington, CEO of Morrison Hotels, and I have some exciting announcements about the future of our company. Eleanor retreated to her table, but her eyes stayed on me. I remained where I was, in perfect view of their table, and waited. As many of you know, James continued, Morrison Hotels has undergone significant transitions this year. We've restructured, refinanced, and repositioned ourselves for tremendous growth. This was only possible because of our new ownership. Richard shifted in his seat. This wasn't the usual speech. 6 months ago, Morrison Hotels was acquired by Celestial Hospitality Group. Tonight, I have the honor of introducing you to the woman behind Celestial, the visionary who saw potential where others saw decline, who understood that true hospitality comes from understanding service at every level. The screens around the ballroom lit up with a photo. My photo. Professional, polished, but unmistakably me. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Isabella Santos, founder and CEO of Celestial Hospitality Group and the new owner of Morrison Hotels. The silence was absolute. Then chaos. Richard stood so fast his chair fell backward. Eleanor's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Alexander, who'd tried to have me escorted out, looked like he might faint. This is a joke, Richard's voice carried across the ballroom. This is impossible. She's the maid's daughter, I finished, walking toward the stage. Yes, I know. You never let me forget it. James handed me the microphone with a smile. I looked out at the room full of people who'd ignored me, dismissed me, treated me as less than human. Then I looked at the Morrison family, frozen at their table like a tableau of horror. Good evening, I began. 15 years ago, I stood in this very ballroom, not as a guest, but as a girl helping her mother serve champagne to people who didn't bother to learn our names. I was the maid's daughter, unworthy of sitting at your tables, attending your parties, or aspiring to your world. My mother died believing that education would be enough to change our circumstances. She was wrong. In your world, education without money is just an educated servant. So I decided to play by your rules. I decided to buy my seat at the table. And then I decided to buy the table itself. I clicked a remote, and the screens showed a corporate structure chart. Celestial Hospitality Group now owns Morrison Hotels entirely. But that's not all. We also own the Morrison family estate in the Hamptons, purchased through foreclosure when you defaulted on the loans you didn't know I held. We own your country club memberships, your yacht slips, even the gallery where you store your art collection. Each revelation was a body blow to the Morrisons. Eleanor sank into her chair. Richard's face turned purple. The children looked at their parents with growing panic. But I'm not here for revenge, I continued. I'm here for justice. Every person who's ever been dismissed as the help, every child who's been told they don't belong, every dreamer who's been mocked for aspirations above their station, this is for them. You can't do this, Alexander shouted from the floor. We'll sue. We'll fight this. With what money? I asked mildly. And which lawyers? The firm you use? I own that too.
Why?
Eleanor's voice was broken. We gave you a home. We gave you opportunity. You gave me servitude and called it charity. You gave me humiliation and called it generosity. You gave me a master class in how the wealthy maintain their power by stepping on those beneath them. So, thank you for the education. I've put it to excellent use. I turned back to the wider audience, many of whom were recording on their phones. Good. Let the world see. The Morrison Hotels will undergo a complete transformation. We'll be establishing the Maria Santos Foundation, named for my mother, to provide full scholarships for children of hospitality workers. We'll be implementing profit sharing for all employees, ensuring that the people who actually run these hotels share in their success. And we'll be creating internship programs that don't care about your last name, only your potential. As for the Morrison family, I looked at them directly. You're welcome to stay in the Hamptons house. As tenants, I'll give you the same below-market rent my mother accepted when she couldn't afford better.
Consider it charity.
This is illegal, Richard sputtered. This is theft. This is capitalism, I corrected. The same system you've used to exploit others for generations.
I just played it better than you.
Please, Sophia spoke for the first time, tears streaming down her face. Please don't do this. We were children. We didn't know better. I looked at her. The girl who'd wanted me at her birthday party but hadn't fought for it, who'd occasionally shown kindness but never courage. You're right, I said gently. You were children, which is why you'll each have trust funds sufficient for a comfortable life. But the empire? The power? The ability to make others feel worthless? That ends tonight. You're destroying our family, Eleanor whispered. No, Mrs. Morrison. I'm giving you the opportunity to build something real. The same opportunity you gave me when you made me realize I could never depend on the kindness of people like you. Consider it a gift. I handed the microphone back to James and walked off the stage. The ballroom erupted in noise, shock, gossip, the sound of an old order crumbling. But I didn't look back. I'd shown them what we were made of, just like my mother wanted. Outside, I found Alexander by the valet stand looking lost. My car, he told the valet.
The Bentley.
I'm sorry, sir, the young man said. That vehicle is registered to Celestial Hospitality. I'll need Ms. Santos' authorization to release it. Alexander turned to me, and for the first time in my life, I saw him without his sneer. He just looked tired and defeated. I suppose you want me to beg, he said. I want you to understand, I replied. For 15 years, your family made me feel worthless. Not because of anything I'd done, but because of who my mother was. Because we were poor. Because you could. It wasn't personal. That's exactly the problem. We weren't people to you. We were just the help. Functions, not humans. Do you know what it's like to grow up in a house where you're constantly reminded you don't belong? To serve food to children your own age who mock you for existing? To watch your mother die serving people who complained about the inconvenience? He was quiet for a moment.
No, I don't know what that's like.
Now you will. Not the dying part. I'm not a monster. But the feeling of being powerless, of depending on someone else's charity, of knowing your worth isn't in your own hands? That education starts now. What do you want from us? Nothing. That's the point. For the first time in your lives, I want absolutely nothing from you. You're free to make your own way, just like I did. Without connections, without inherited wealth, without a name that opens doors. See what you're really made of. You hate us that much? I considered the question. I did. For years, I hated you with every fiber of my being. But hate is exhausting, and I had an empire to build. Now, I nothing you. You're just people who used to matter and don't anymore. A car pulled up, my car, a modest Tesla that raised eyebrows among the valets used to Ferraris and Bentleys. One more thing I said before getting in. The house staff, the ones you never bothered to learn about, they all have stock options now. Your former maid? She retired to Florida with a 7-figure portfolio. The gardener's kids? Full rides to any college they choose. The people you ignored while they served you? They're all wealthier than you now. Funny how the world works. I drove away from the Morrison Plaza, my plaza, thinking about my mother. She'd wanted me to show them what we were made of. I'd shown them something more, what we could become when we refused to accept their definitions of worth. The headlines the next day were everything I'd expected. Maid's daughter buys out billionaire family, from servant to CEO. The Isabella Santos story, Morrison empire falls to former employee. But the headline that mattered most came from a small financial blog. Santos establishes largest hospitality worker scholarship fund in history. That was what we were made of. Not revenge, though it tasted sweet. Not just wealth, though it opened doors. We were made of determination to ensure no child would scrub floors to pay for college, no parent would hide cancer to keep health insurance, no person would be dismissed as just the help.
My phone rang.
James Wellington.
The press wants a statement, he said.
What should I tell them about your plans for Morrison Hotels? Tell them we're promoting from within. Every executive position will be filled by someone who worked their way up from entry level. Tell them we're eliminating unpaid internships and replacing them with training programs that pay living wages. Tell them the maid's daughter is going to show the industry what happens when you treat every employee like they matter. That's going to shake up the entire sector. Good. It needs shaking. And the Morrisons? They're requesting a meeting. They can submit their request through proper channels. I'll review it in the order received. They might want to get comfortable. I have a lot of applications to process. You're enjoying this. I'm enjoying justice. There's a difference. That night, I visited my mother's grave for the first time since the acquisition. I'd bought the cemetery too, not for revenge, but to ensure it would be maintained, that the graves of workers would be as manicured as those of the wealthy. I showed them, Mama, I whispered to her headstone. I showed them what we're made of. But more importantly, I showed us. We're not made to serve. We're made to soar. It just took me buying their wings to prove it. I left fresh flowers, birds of paradise, exotic and expensive, the kind Eleanor used to demand for her parties. But these weren't for show. These were for love, for memory, for a woman who deserved so much more than she got. The Morrisons did request a meeting, eventually. I made them wait 3 months, not out of cruelty, but because I genuinely had more important things to do. When I finally agreed to see them, it was in the conference room of what used to be their corporate headquarters. They filed in like defendants to a sentencing. Richard had aged a decade in 3 months. Eleanor's perfect facade had cracked, showing the frightened woman beneath. The children, adults now, but still children in their parents' shadow, looked hollow. "Thank you for seeing us," Eleanor began, the words obviously painful. "You have 15 minutes, I said. "I have a board meeting at 3. "We want to negotiate," Richard said. "Surely there's a deal to be made." "You've made your point." "What point do you think I've made?" "That you're powerful now. That you've won." "We acknowledge that. But destroying us won't change the past." "I'm not destroying you. I'm employing you. Alexander, I believe you start your management training program on Monday. Housekeeping department. Victoria, you're in food service. Sophia, front desk. Your parents are too old for active duty, so they'll be in our retiree support program. It's quite generous. We take care of our own. You expect us to work as maids?" Eleanor's voice cracked. "I expect you to work. The position is irrelevant. My mother had more dignity cleaning your toilets than you had sitting on them. But if the work is beneath you, you're free to seek employment elsewhere. I hear other hotel chains are hiring, though they all seem to check references with us now." "This is humiliation," Alexander said. "This is opportunity. The same opportunity you told me I should be grateful for. Was I wrong to be grateful? Should I have demanded better? Please, educate me on the proper response to being offered honest work." They had no answer because there wasn't one. They'd painted themselves into this corner with their own philosophies. "We could have been family," Sophia said quietly. "If we'd been different. If we'd been better. We could have been real family." It was the closest any of them had come to genuine reflection. I softened, slightly. "We could have been many things. But we are what we are. I'm offering you the chance to become something else. That's more than you offered me. Will you forgive us?" Eleanor asked. "Eventually? Forgiveness isn't mine to give. Ask my mother." "Oh wait, you can't. She died serving you, remember? So, ask yourself, what would she forgive? What would any of the people you stepped on forgive? And then try to earn it."
How?
"By learning their names. The people who serve you, learn their names, their stories, their dreams. See them as human. It's a start." They left with their employment packets, the mighty Morrisons reduced to entry-level positions in their own former empire.
But not reduced, I realized.
Given the chance to be elevated through actual work, actual worth. Some of them took it. Sophia, surprisingly, became one of our best front desk managers. She had a gift for seeing guests as people, maybe because she finally understood what it was like to be unseen. She worked her way up, earned her promotions, became someone her parents could be proud of for real reasons. Alexander lasted 2 weeks in housekeeping before quitting. He tried to find work elsewhere, but his reputation preceded him. Last I heard, he was teaching tennis at a country club in Connecticut, not a member, just an employee. He sent me a letter once, saying he finally understood the weight of invisibility. I didn't reply, but I kept the letter. Victoria disappeared entirely. Some said she moved to Europe, living off what remained of her divorce settlement. Others said she was teaching English in Japan, finding worth in work that helped others. I hoped it was the latter. Richard and Eleanor lived quietly in the Hamptons' house, their roles reversed. He learned to cook. She learned to clean. They learned to live without servants, becoming self-sufficient for the first time in their lives. Neighbors reported seeing them at the local grocery store, comparing prices, clipping coupons, ordinary in ways they'd never imagined they'd be. I visited them once, 5 years after the acquisition. They were sitting on the porch I'd once been forbidden to use, watching the sunset over the ocean they'd never noticed when they owned it. Isabella, Eleanor said, and there was no ice in it. Just acknowledgement. Mrs. Morrison. Mr. Morrison. Eleanor and Richard, she corrected. We're not those people anymore. We sat in silence for a while. Then Richard spoke. Your mother would be proud. It was the first time either of them had acknowledged her as more than the maid. She was always proud, I said.
You just couldn't see it.
We couldn't see anything, Eleanor admitted. We were blind. Wealth made us blind. Poverty gives you different eyes, I said. Sometimes that's a gift. Is that what this was? A gift? An education. The same one you gave me, just reversed. We watched the sunset in silence. 3 people who'd lived in the same house for years, but were only now occupying the same space. The scholarship recipients, Eleanor said eventually. We met some of them at the company picnic. Maria's scholars, they call themselves. I know. They're extraordinary. Future doctors, engineers, teachers. All children of hospitality workers. All children, period. That's what matters. One of them, Richard's voice caught. One of them is our former gardener's daughter, Lupita. She's at Harvard Medical School now. She thanked us for hosting the program, not knowing we had nothing to do with it. She said she was glad the Morrison family finally understood the value of every worker. And do you? We're learning, Eleanor said.
Slowly.
But we're learning. I left them on that porch, 2 people discovering life beyond privilege. They'd never thank me. We were past that kind of transaction. But they were living with awareness, and that was worth more than gratitude. The business continued to grow. Celestial Hospitality became the largest hotel chain in North America, but more importantly, it became the most equitable. Our employee satisfaction rates were industry-leading. Our retention was unmatched. Turns out, when you treat workers like humans, they create exceptional guest experiences. I kept the Morrison name on the hotels, not for them, but for the poetry of it. Every time a guest checked into a Morrison hotel, they were supporting the vision of a maid's daughter. Every dollar spent was a vote for dignity over degradation. 10 years after the acquisition, I was invited to speak at Columbia Business School. The auditorium was packed with future titans of industry, eager to learn the secrets of my success. The secret, I told them, is that there's no secret. Just work and worth and the willingness to see value where others see nothing. My mother saw value in me when the world saw a servant's daughter. I saw value in workers when the industry saw expenses. That's not genius. That's just paying attention. A student raised her hand. But how did you stay motivated when everyone doubted you?
Everyone didn't doubt me.
The Morrisons doubted me. Their friends doubted me. But the other maids' children? The gardeners? The cooks? They believed because they knew what we were capable of when given the chance. Find your believers in unlikely places. What about revenge? Another student asked. Wasn't taking over their company revenge? Was it revenge when a seed becomes a tree that overshadows the gardener who thought it was a weed? I didn't grow to spite them. I grew because that's what living things do when they're not being stepped on. The fact that my growth diminished them is coincidence, not intention. But you enjoyed it. I enjoyed justice. I enjoyed irony. I enjoyed proving that worth isn't inherited, but earned. If that's revenge, then yes, I enjoyed it. But revenge ends. What I built continues. That's the difference. After the speech, a young woman approached me. She was Latina, dressed in borrowed business clothes that didn't quite fit, nervously clutching a resume. Miss Santos? I'm Carmen Rodriguez. I'm a maid's daughter too. My mom cleans offices here at Columbia. I'm graduating next month, but nobody will interview me. They hear my background, and suddenly the positions are filled. I looked at her, at myself, 20 years ago. Same hunger, same fear, same determination wrapped in discrimination. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Celestial Headquarters. Ask for James Wellington. Tell him I sent you for the executive training program. But I haven't even interviewed. You've been interviewing your whole life. Every time you watched your mother come home exhausted, every time you were dismissed for your background, every time you chose to keep going anyway, that was your interview. Tomorrow is just a formality. Her eyes filled with tears.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Don't thank me. Prove me right.
Show them what you're made of. She left clutching my business card like a lifeline. I knew she'd be at the office by 8:30. Resume perfect, shoes shined, ready to begin the climb I'd once made. That night, I found myself back at the Morrison Plaza, standing in the ballroom where everything had changed. It was set up for another gala, someone else's charity, someone else's cause. But the bones were the same. Ms. Santos? A voice from the past. I turned to find Sophia Morrison, Sophia Chin now, married to a pediatrician she'd met while working the front desk. Sophia, you're looking well. She was. Gone was the entitled princess who needed designer everything. This was a woman who'd found herself through work, through struggle, through the education I'd forced on her family.
I wanted to thank you, she said.
I know that sounds strange, but you saved us. Not financially. You destroyed us financially. But you saved us from being the people we were becoming. You saved yourselves. I just took away the safety net. The safety net was suffocating us. We were drowning in privilege, too blind to see it.
She paused. I named my daughter Maria.
After your mother. I tell her stories about the woman who kept our house beautiful while we made it ugly with our attitudes. Is that okay? Something loosened in my chest. A knot I hadn't realized was still there. That's more than okay. That's redemption. My parents, they'd like to see you again. Not for business. Just to apologize properly. To thank you for the education they didn't want but needed. Some educations don't need words. They speak for themselves. Like how you let them keep the house. How you ensure their medical bills are covered through the retiree program. How you send them flowers on your mother's birthday every year. I hadn't known they'd notice the flowers. My mother would have done the same. She had a kind heart. I just have her heart with more resources. And less forgiveness? Different forgiveness. She forgave because she had to. I forgive because I choose to. That's what power gives you, choice. Sophia hugged me then, unexpectedly. Not the air kisses of society, but a real embrace between women who'd traveled far from where they'd started. Your daughter, she said as we parted. Carmen Rodriguez. She's brilliant. VP of Operations at 28. You have an eye for talent. I have an eye for hunger. Talent can be taught. Hunger has to be born. Like yours was. Like mine was forged. In the fires of your family's dismissal. Then we gave you something after all. You gave me fuel. I made the fire. She left me alone in the ballroom, surrounded by ghosts of the girl I'd been. The maid's daughter, they'd called me. As if that defined my limits rather than my launching pad. My phone buzzed. A text from Carmen Rodriguez, now VP of Operations as Sophia had noted. Reviewing applications for the Santos Scholars. 500 Maid's children applying for 50 spots. How do I choose? You don't choose the best, I texted back. You choose the hungriest. The ones who have something to prove. The ones who've been called worthless and are ready to show their worth.
Like you did?
Like we all do, given the chance. I left the plaza and drove through Manhattan, past hotels I owned, restaurants I controlled, buildings that bore my influence, if not my name. The empire built on the foundation of my mother's bent back and broken dreams. At a red light, I saw a woman in a maid's uniform waiting for the bus. Dead tired, feet swollen, but still standing. Still going home to children who needed her, dreams that demanded her sacrifice. I pulled over and rolled down the window. Excuse me, do you have children? She looked wary. Rich people in expensive cars didn't usually talk to maids kindly.
Yes.
3. Are they in school? Yes, ma'am. My oldest wants to go to college, but... She shrugged. the universal gesture of dreams deferred by reality. I handed her my card. Celestial Hospitality has a scholarship program. Full rides for children of hospitality workers. Have your oldest call this number. Tell them Isabella sent you.
Why?
Her voice was suspicious. Life had taught her that nothing came free. Because my mother was you. Because your children are me. Because someone should have done this sooner, and now I can. I drove away before she could thank me, before the moment became about gratitude instead of justice. In the rearview mirror, I saw her staring at the card like it might disappear. It wouldn't. I'd make sure of that. The empire continued to grow. More hotels, more scholarships, more lives changed. But the real victory wasn't in the numbers. It was in the stories. Carmen Rodriguez, who became CEO of our East Coast division. Lupita Hernandez, who graduated from Harvard Medical and opened clinics in underserved communities. The hundreds of Maria scholars who were rewriting their families' stories. And the Morrisons? They survived. More than survived, they lived. Real lives, with real work and real worth. Eleanor volunteered at a literacy center, teaching English to immigrant workers. Richard became a mentor for young men aging out of foster care. They learned what my mother always knew, that service was dignity, not degradation. You gave us our lives back, Eleanor told me at our last meeting, years later. Not the lives we thought we wanted, but the lives we needed. I gave you nothing. I took everything. What you built from that, that's yours. Then we built well? You built honestly. That's better than well. She was dying then, cancer claiming her as it had claimed my mother. But she faced it differently, with grace born from struggle, dignity earned through labor. She'd learned what my mother always knew. We're all just temporary, but what we do with our time matters. Will you forgive us? She asked on her deathbed. Really forgive us? I forgave you the day you learned my mother's name. Not when I told you, but when you remembered it on your own. When Maria became a person to you, not just a function. That's when forgiveness began. Tell her, when you see her, tell her we're sorry. Tell her yourself. You'll be equals there. She smiled at that, this woman who'd once thought equality was beneath her. She died holding Richard's hand, in the house she'd once owned and now rented, surrounded by the life she'd built from the ashes of empire. I spoke at her funeral. The Morrisons had few friends left from their old life, but the church was packed with people from their new one. Students Eleanor had taught, young men Richard had mentored, co-workers who'd become real friends. The congregation of a life lived honestly. Eleanor Morrison learned late what my mother always knew, I said from the pulpit, that we are not our possessions or positions. We are our actions, our kindness, our willingness to see others as fully human. She spent the first part of her life blind to that truth, and the second part making amends. That's not tragedy, that's redemption. After the service, Richard approached me. He was Frylia now, but stood straighter than he had in his empire days.
Thank you, he said simply.
For everything, even the pain, especially the pain. Pain was just the teacher.
You were the student.
A slow student. The best lessons take time. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $100, probably a significant portion of his savings. For the scholarship fund, he said. It's not much, but it's everything. I interrupted. This is worth more than the millions you used to have because this cost you something. This is sacrifice, not excess. Your mother would understand that. My mother lived that every day of her life. And now I understand her. Too late, but I understand. Understanding is never too late. It's just sometimes more expensive. He smiled at that, this man who'd lost an empire and found a soul. I kept that check, had it framed next to my mother's employee ID card from the Morrison estate. The beginning and end of a story, the alpha and omega of justice served cold, but seasoned with mercy. 20 years after my mother's death, I stood in the boardroom of Celestial Hospitality, looking out at an empire that spanned continents. Hotels, resorts, cruise lines, a kingdom built on the foundation of treating workers like humans. James Wellington, still my CEO and closest advisor, brought in the quarterly reports. Profits up 12%. Employee satisfaction at 95%. The Santos Scholars Program had graduated its 10,000th recipient. Not bad for a maid's daughter, he said with a smile. Not bad for anyone, I corrected. That's the point. Success shouldn't require overcoming contempt. It should just require opportunity. Speaking of opportunity, there's a proposal from the board. They want to name the new flagship hotel after you. The Isabella Santos Tower.
No.
I told them you'd say that. Counterproposal? The Maria Santos Tower. Everything I built stands on her shoulders. She'd be proud. She is proud. I feel her sometimes, in board meetings when I'm fighting for better wages, in scholarship ceremonies when another maid's child gets their chance. She's in every good thing we do. And the Morrisons? Do you feel them? I feel their education. Every time I'm tempted to see people as functions rather than humans, I remember how that felt. They taught me what not to become. That's valuable too. Richard still asks about you. Wants to know if you're happy. Tell him happiness is for people who had choices. I had hunger, but hunger satisfied? That's better than happy. That's fulfilled. That night, I visited my mother's grave as I did every month. The cemetery was beautiful now, maintained by an endowment that ensured no grave would ever be forgotten. No stone would crumble from neglect. We did it, Mama, I told her. We showed them what we're made of. But more than that, we changed what them means. The Morrisons aren't them anymore, they're us. Workers, strivers, humans. That's the real victory. The wind rustled through the trees, and I could almost hear her voice. Mija, you did more than I dreamed.
I did what you taught me.
I kept my dignity. I just had more resources to defend it with. I left flowers. Not the exotic birds of paradise this time, but simple carnations like she used to buy when she could afford any flowers at all. Because the message wasn't about wealth anymore. It was about love, respect, and the revolutionary idea that everyone deserves both. A car pulled up as I was leaving. Sophia Chun, holding her daughter's hand. Little Maria, 5 years old now, with curious eyes that missed nothing. I thought we might find you here, Sophia said. Maria wanted to meet her namesake. The little girl stepped forward, placing a hand-drawn picture on my mother's grave. It showed 2 women, one cleaning, one watching, with a heart between them. My mommy says she was a hero, little Maria said, because she worked hard and loved you. She was, I agreed, the biggest hero I know. Bigger than you? Mommy says you own everything. I only own things. Your namesake owns something better. She owned herself. No one could take that from her. Can I be like her when I grow up? I knelt to her level. You already are. You have her name, her spirit. But you'll be like her in your own way. Maybe you'll be a teacher or a doctor or an artist. Maybe you'll run hotels like your mom. Or maybe you'll do something we can't even imagine yet. The point is, you'll do it with dignity. What's dignity? Sophia answered. It's knowing you matter, no matter what anyone says. Oh, Maria said, processing this. Like how Grandma Eleanor learned she mattered even when she was poor. Exactly like that, I said, marveling at how children could distill complex truths to their essence. We stood together at my mother's grave, the maid's daughter who'd become a billionaire, the Morrison heiress who'd become a worker, and the child who would inherit both stories and make them her own. Thank you, Sophia said quietly, for not letting us stay who we were. Thank you for becoming who you could be. It wasn't easy. The best things never are. Ask her. I nodded toward my mother's stone. I think she knows. I think she's proud of all of us. I think you're right. We left together. 3 generations bound by a story that started with contempt and ended with comprehension. Little Maria chattered about her kindergarten class, where the janitor was her favorite person because he always had time to listen. Just like your great-grandmother, Sophia told her. She always had time to listen too, even when people were mean to her. Especially then. Because she knew that mean people are usually just scared people who forgot how to be kind. Is that why Grandma and Grandpa were mean before? Because they were scared? Yes, baby. They were scared of losing things that didn't matter and couldn't see the things that did. But they're not scared now?
No.
Aunt Isabella helped them be brave. By taking their stuff? By showing them they were more than their stuff. The child pondered this with a seriousness only 5-year-olds could manage. I want to be like Aunt Isabella too. But first I want to be like Maria. Is that okay? That's perfect, I said. Be like Maria first. The rest will follow. As their car drove away, I stood in the parking lot of the cemetery, thinking about circles and cycles, about how revenge had become redemption, how the maid's daughter had not just risen but lifted others with her.
My phone rang.
Carmen Rodriguez. We have a situation, she said. A family in housekeeping. Single mother, 3 kids. She's been hiding that she's living in her car because she's afraid to lose the job. Sound familiar? Too familiar. Put her family up in the hotel tonight. Tomorrow, move them into corporate housing. Full scholarship package for the kids, effective immediately. That's not standard protocol, it is now. Every employee struggling with housing gets help. Every parent working multiple jobs gets support. Every child gets a chance. Make it policy. That's going to cost less than one Morrison family maintained for a year.
Do it.
Yes, ma'am. And Isabella? This is why we love working for you. You see us. My mother saw me. I'm just passing it on. I drove back to the city, to my penthouse that overlooked the Hudson. It was luxurious by any standard, but I'd earned every square foot with sweat and sacrifice. No inheritance, no handouts, just hunger transformed into empire. But empire wasn't the point. It never had been. The point was Carmen and her programs. The point was little Maria learning that janitors were heroes. The point was Eleanor Morrison dying with dignity she'd earned rather than inherited. The point was every maid's child who'd ever been told they didn't belong learning that belonging wasn't granted but taken. My mother had wanted me to show them what we were made of. I'd shown them we were made of stars, bright, burning, impossible to ignore once you learned to look up instead of down. The maid's daughter had become everything they said she couldn't be. But more importantly, she'd ensured no child would ever be just the maid's daughter again. They'd have names, stories, futures,
Dignity.
and that was worth more than all the hotels in the world. Different paths, same destination. Finally home in a world remade by the very hands they dismissed as only fit to clean. My mother was right. They did see me, eventually. But by then, I'd learned the most important lesson of all. I didn't need them to. I saw myself. And that was enough to change everything. The end. That's my story. How 15 years of being just the maid's daughter led to owning the empire that had dismissed me. How my mother's dignity and service became my foundation for success. How the Morrisons learned that worth isn't inherited but earned, sometimes through loss. If you've ever been dismissed as the help, if you've been told you don't belong in spaces you clean, if you've had to smile while serving people who don't see you as human, I see you. Your worth is infinite. Your potential is limitless. Your time is coming. Drop a comment below sharing your own story of rising above those who tried to keep you down. Where are you watching from? What empires are you building while others call you worthless? And please hit that subscribe button if you believe that dignity doesn't depend on position, that maid's children can become billionaires, and that sometimes the best revenge is forcing your oppressors to walk in your shoes, literally. Thank you for sharing my journey from servant to sovereign. Thank you for understanding that my mother's bent back held up more than just the Morrison household. It held up my entire future. Until next time, remember, they can call you just the maid's daughter, but they can't stop you from buying their house and making them pay rent with dignity.